Welcome to From the Ground Up NC, where I help people better understand local government, public policy, and the elected officials who represent them. Today, I'm really excited. This is our first episode for our candidate interviews, and I'm going to be joined by someone today who is not a stranger to this platform. She actually gave me my first interview when I first launched this platform in 2024. So I'm excited to have Senator Kandie Smith here with me. She represents North Carolina Senate District 5, Pitt and Edgecombe Counties, and she's running for re-election, y'all. So today we're going to be discussing who she is, what a senator does, her priorities, her voting records, and as well as the questions that were submitted by you guys today. So let's go ahead and let's bring the senator on. Senator, how are you doing? Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me and taking the time out to inform the people.
Absolutely. So how has everything been going with you and campaign and just everyday life?
Busy. What do they say? Busy, busy, busy. That's pretty much the sum of everything. It's just been busy, but it's a good busy and not a bad busy.
Yeah.
And I'm here to still offer myself and my advocacy.
That's good. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. Now, for someone who may be just learning about you for the first time, who is Kandie Smith and what led you into public service?
You started with one of the toughest questions, didn't you? And I say that because it's hard sometimes for people to talk about themselves and who they are, even though they've been with themselves all their lives. But Kandie Smith is a strong, bold, supportive, outspoken individual who loves to advocate for individuals and who loves to laugh, who loves to dance, who happens to be an elected official, because that does not define me. And I'm the oldest of 4 children from South Carolina, Spartanburg, South Carolina. Been in Greenville, North Carolina for over 21 years. I love to laugh. I love to read. I love to travel. More importantly, I love to spend time with Elena because she keeps me on my toes. So me and Lele. That's basically who Kandie Smith is as a person. What was the second half of that question?
I wanted to let the people who may just be getting to know you or first time hearing from you, what led you into public service?
I moved to Greenville it was my 3rd year being here. And someone asked me, you should run for a city council. And I was like, what? They said, well, you work with people, you advocate for people already. I think you should run for a city council. I said, well, what exactly do they do? So they began to share some information, and I said, let me think about it. When's the next election? Because, of course, I was not prepared to run just being asked. And they said, it's every 2 years. And I said, well, let me think about it. And I began to watch more so that I could see what really takes place at the city council level and what I will be required to do if I decided to run. And so in doing so, 2 years came up very swiftly because I had no idea. Someone came to me and said, I thought you was going to run. And I said, huh? They said, you said you was going to run. I said, I was going to think about it. So I didn't want to be seen as a liar. So I went and registered to run. And it was on the last day. They closed at 12. So it was probably like 11. So I went and I registered. And that's been my path ever since. I ran for the Greenville City Council, District 1. And I won that very first election by only 12 votes. And I have been elected ever since.
That's awesome, Senator. So what are some things in your life do you think shaped you for the office that you're in right now?
Okay. If I think about what shaped me, first I think about how I grew up in Spartanburg, South Carolina, the oldest of 4. I had to take responsibility a lot. Let's just say we were not baby kids. We're not gonna say that, but we love to have fun. I'm just not gonna lie. We love to have fun, and we were very interactive. And sometimes when you're like that, you break things, you do things, and so somebody has to step up and take responsibility, and then someone has to learn how to repair those things that were broken. So that was that was me. I did a lot of that. Um, I played sports when I was in school, so I learned to work as a team, but I also learned how to take directions from my coach, do the things I needed to do. But more importantly, my mother had us in church. And while in church, we had to do speeches, Easter speech, Christmas speech. I mean, it was like a speech for everything. Um, Vacation Bible School, learn the 66 books of the Bible, stand up and read the scripture. Just, doing different things where you had to be in front of people and you had to speak and you had to learn information. And you don't know until you know, but those things help to prepare me because although I still get nervous standing up in front of people, I feel much more comfortable because I did it from such an early age. So I think those are the things that help prepare me. I had challenges in high school as well. Um, and even in college, I was the treasurer of my student body in college. And I still never thought about things like this until now. You know how you reflect back and say, wow, I guess I was elected for something. But I had to represent people. And I've always been a supporter. I always like to uplift people because everybody is not where they're like, okay, I can do it. Sometimes you need someone to encourage you. Sometimes you need people to lift you up. And I've just been one of those type people. I think that's prepared me to be in this position and then not to be afraid because I accept challenges. And I think everybody knows that. And I think those challenges are what make you.
Appreciate you for sharing that, Senator. Now, I wanted to ask you, a lot of residents may not fully understand what a senator does. Could you explain to the people what you are responsible for and what kinds of issues should people bring to your office?
Okay. So what I'm responsible for as a senator is being the liaison between the constituents of District 5 and the state. And what that means is if we think about DOT, if we think about broadband, if we think about, um, we help with funding education, we help with economic development. So the different things that we do as a state, um, the average person might not know how to navigate it. Like with unemployment, like they may not know, like, what do we do? How do we do it? So during COVID, people would call me. And my job was to make sure that I was able to reach out and have someone to be able to assist them so that everything could go through without an issue. And I was able to do that. Anything that, like Social Security issues sometimes that people have, uh, it's just so many different things that a person, if you look at the state level, anything that is state related, people could call and say, can you assist with this? Can you assist with that? Now, everything is not, it takes some time to navigate because, the city has streets, the county has streets. So it's still a little different. So you have to identify like what area would really be covered. But when I think about taxes, state taxes. Some people have issues with their state taxes and they're trying to figure out, well, what do I do? How do I navigate that? I've been able to assist and guide and direct people in the right direction. I've been able to appoint people to boards and commissions. So we have a lot of boards and commissions, and those boards and commissions, they deal with the issues that we deal with as a state. Um, One of the things I can think about is the accounting board. Like a lot of people don't know we have these things. So I was able to appoint someone to the accounting board. We have a juvenile justice board. We have contractor boards. So all these laws that we have as a state, there's typically boards and committees that look at those and make adjustments to them. And so as a senator, my job is to help appoint people to these boards. We have a utilities commission. I know that people have been talking about these rates lately and how they've been having multi-year rate hikes and all of those things, we have a utility board, and we can try to appoint people to those boards as well. So my job as a senator is to be the liaison between the people and between that state. Department of Health and Human Services, when we're looking at Medicaid expansion, we assist with issues such as Medicaid expansion, helping with that. We assist with anything dealing with Medicaid, that we help with that. Um, we're just, our job is to be a liaison for the people. Now, a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people have no idea, and so then they don't call. I've heard someone say just as recent as the other day, I didn't know I could call you. And I was like, what do you mean? You didn't know you could call me? I'm your senator. So the other part of it is I tell people the reason and how we make laws is when you call and you tell us about issues and you give us things that you think might need to be changed because it's been the same for so long or it has not worked effectively. And so when we hear about those things, we can take some of these issues and look at them and say, let's go look at our current law and let's look at how it can be revamped or revised or improved or changed altogether. And so when we are introducing legislation, it comes from the people because you're the ones that's interacting, you're out in the public, you're out in your jobs, in your field, and you see your policy state that you must do this, this, and that, but it no longer is effective. It doesn't work. It's not realistic. Then when you reach out to me, I go back and I take a look at that. So I think another thing that I think about is during COVID that happened. One of our cosmetology schools, they called me because during COVID it was very different. And they called me and said, listen, we need some changes. Can we look at this, this, and this? And I was able to introduce it. It came up as a reg reform and a regulatory reform is what we call it. And so we were able to get it put into a bill, and it helped with when they were training instructors, the amount of hours they had to train instructors with. And the instructors were already certified cosmetologists, but we changed the amount of hours as instructors so they wouldn't be spending so much time away from doing what they really needed to do because they were already certified in their field. But as far as becoming an instructor, we could streamline it and they could become instructors easier. So those are the type things that we do at the state level.
Well, I definitely learned something today because I think I was one of those people kind of still learning like what y'all do, but I didn't know like a lot of the legislation that I guess you bring, has to do with coming from the people.
Oh
So,
yeah, we we're not as smart as we try to make people think that we come up with every single thing. No, that is not the case. Laws are made from you all as the constituents. You tell us in the different fields. If a doctor says, "Well, this does not work, this certification, they want us to do that," that's how we know.
yeah.
If we have a speech pathologist, she'll say, well, or he will say, the requirement for this is that for certification. I mean, different people, um, contractors, they tell us what the issues and concerns are. And then what we do is we go back and we can take a look at those and say, what do you think we should do? Now we lobby, we talk to them, we talk to other people, and we bring as much information together to try to figure out what might be the best path. But then we introduce that legislation and it goes through the committees. That's why it goes through committees at the state level, because once it goes through committees, then we can talk about what might be good, what might be bad, what we might consider that's different. Once we do that, then we can, it goes through the chambers, and if it's able to go through the House and the Senate and then to the governor's desk, that's how it becomes law.
That's good. And just looking at some of the bills sometimes that I see, is presented, it seems as though a lot of them are stuck at some of these chambers or I guess some of the committees for like a long time. Is there a reason for that? Just even doing my research on you this past week, I was like, man, there's a lot of stuff that's just sitting in committees.
So those things are what we call tabled.
Okay.
So if 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 it's tabled from the House or if it's tabled from the Senate, um, it ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
So sometimes we introduce legislation and it's over 1,000 bills. It's not like people think, oh, let me give you one or two things. And if you can introduce that, we have over 1,000 bills that's typically introduced in a session, right? And those bills, when they are introduced, on the Senate side, there's a rules chair. On the House side, there's a rules chair. And they get a chance to look at the bills and see what they want to move forward. Right now, they're not trying to move any of the bills that Democrats introduced forward. I can just tell you that, which is unfortunate. And so we try to offer amendments, and they're not trying to hear that. But typically, if it's something that that's been a concern and people looked at in the rules chair say, this is interesting, then they'll assign it to a committee. And then it goes through different committees and it comes back through rules before it goes to the floor. But if it's something that they have no intention of taking up, then they refer it to rules and you never see it again, unfortunately.
That's something I noticed. So I appreciate you for clearing that up. What I wanted to ask you, since being in the General Assembly, like how has that experience changed the kind of senator, that you try to be? How has that impacted you in any way?
So I think what it's done for me is sometimes made me a little bit more frustrated.
Yeah.
And when I say frustrated, because I think it moves slow. I think there's a lot of things that can happen faster. I mean, I would want it to happen faster. And I know we have to go through the process, but sometimes the processes are extended and they don't have to be. Like 367 days late for a budget, that is unheard of. Most people tell me we can't leave until we do a budget
Yeah.
because that is our one constitutional obligation, just like it is theirs. They do not leave until they do a budget, and we unfortunately did not. So those type things really bother me because I'm hearing more and more. Oh, this is the first time this has ever happened, and I've heard that when we were in session, like for an entire year. People say, "Well, y'all still in session?" Yeah, they said this
Mm.
has never happened. I'm hearing those, this has never happened more and more. So it is, those things frustrate me. Now, how do they change me? They do make me stronger because you know what I do? I learn from what's taking place. If I sat here right now and told you that I know everything, then I'm lying. And if anybody else told you that, it's the same thing. You learn every day. The longer you're there, you learn a lot of things. You learn things that you've never known. You learn what's different. You learn how you navigate sometimes to try to get things done. So it's been a lot of life lessons, I'll tell you that.
Now, when you're deciding on how to vote for something, like what carries the most weight for you? The needs of your district, your personal convictions, your party? Where does those decisions come from?
Needs of my district carry the most weight for me, but then it also, I have to look at, of course, my personal convictions, because if there's anything that's against my personal convictions, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. But the needs of my district, along with, because it's not just like so easy to make it cut and dry to be isolated, because if we have a bill that affects everybody in North Carolina, right, and I know it will help my district, but it's detrimental to most North Carolinians, I, it's hard for me to be on board with some of those things. But for example, I know that when the farm bill came out in the beginning in its original form, it was a lot of people and they were going back and forth, and it was a provision in about raw milk, and it's just, so many differences that people had. I have a lot of farmers here in eastern North Carolina, and so I spent a lot of time talking with them and listening to them. I think the other part of it was about the pesticides, and so they helped to educate me and let me know what was happening, what this was about, and we talked about it. And so when it came up on the floor, I had a chance to weigh the information I received from meeting with the farmers, talking to the farmers, reading what's in the bill. Of course, I talked to the people in my party, but looking at everything all together, and I was able to vote for the farm bill. Many people in my party did not vote for the farm bill. And so it's a lot of things that you kind of factor into it. But if it's something that's against my values and morals, typically I'm a no. So if it's something that's going to take advantage of people, I'm a no.
Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
going to ask you too. So, like, the language is just as important because, excuse me, what I was seeing is just reading like bills. There is so much sometimes that are in bills, and it could be about so many different things. It could just be packed with so many different things. So
Look, you said it.
I mean, it's the truth, Senator. I mean, just just reading, and just trying to see and understand things. It'll be a bill about titled one thing, but it'll have so many other things inside of it, that really could be missed if you're not, paying attention. But like, how important is the language in it too? Because maybe you agree with a part of it and not all of it. You know what I mean? So how do you go about making the decision when it's something like that?
Sometimes it's very challenging. Let me just be honest with you. The last bill that I received that had so much in it that I still don't know what's in it, and it's a lot of things that were detrimental to people. It was the budget. It was 630 something pages. We were given 24 hours to vote on it. Just that alone, to me, was an issue. Did it have some good things? I think every bill that's passed has good things. But does the good outweigh the bad? And because you can't read every single thing when it's 24 hours, over 630 something pages thrusted on you, it's just, I don't know. It's one of those things. There's no way you're going to be able to know everything. And a lot of the bills have great names because it looks like, wow, it's a positive name. But it's, if you read on the inside of it, you might
Yeah,
find some stuff and be like, whoa, I didn't know y'all was doing that. I didn't know
yeah,
this. I didn't know that. So that's the that's why we encourage people to make sure you read the bill in its entirety. Because while you're saying, yes, they did this, you might not see, oh my gosh, they did that, that, and that.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's part of it. So that's why I don't watch a lot of TV because
Absolutely,
I gotta be reading.
that's true. And it seems as though sometimes, even when the news is putting things out about bills, they put the things that catch the people's attention. So they're not really like buzzwords and things like that. So they're not really going to read. Now, Senator, what you said kind of, I've heard another representative say this before, and I think I shared my concern with you about this, about having no time to read bills, and they are affecting an entire state. Like, we're writing legislation, we're writing bills, passing laws, and we're not reading. Why does nobody stand up and be like, you know what? We not doing this until we have the proper time to be able to make sure that what is in here, you know, is okay for the people of North Carolina.
So let me tell you, we did that. One of the bills that came out was not even written by any of our staff in the General Assembly. Because typically we could go to legislative analysis, we could ask questions, they give us answers, then we have an idea and understanding of what the bill is about. But this time we sat in our seats, papers were passed out, and we was all looking at the paper, and it was a bill being introduced. So then we asked staff, and it's like, we don't know. We didn't write this. What? And they tried to make us vote on it. And we said, we need to caucus. We need to caucus. And they did. First, the answer was no. They were not going to let us take a break to be able to read the bill. And then finally, they just said, okay, because, they have the majority, and they let us take a break to read the bill. So we took a break. We read it as much as we could because they told us we had to come back and vote. We came back, and then when it was time for us to vote on that bill, what we ended up doing was giving our information to the clerk, and we walked out. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, y'all walked out. And we just told them, this is unprecedented. This is unheard of. This is not how North Carolinians deserve to be treated. Because they want us to vet these bills. They want us to read these bills. They want us to know what we're voting on. And this was not even written in-house. This was written by a think tank group that was on the outside and gave it to them. And then they gave it to us within 15 minutes and said we needed to vote on it. So imagine a 630 something page bill they wanted us to vote on with all these things in it. And then we had something that was less than 24 hours. It was like 15, 20 minutes. They just gave it to us. And we was like, what? We had no idea. And when you have things like that, it's typically not good. Now, I personally don't think it's a good thing. I don't care if a Democrat does it or a Republican. I don't think that's good. I think things need to be vetted. I think the more legislation has the eyes and ears of all parties together looking at it, trying to make improvements or adjustments, the better the bill is going to be. No bill will ever be perfect, and that's what people always will tell you. But if you decide to eliminate one entire side completely and say, we're just going to write all the bills, is what we think. Now, there's been times where some of our peers have said, ooh, those are some great ideas, but they're in a chokehold and they were not allowed to take any of our amendments. They had to table all of them. So that's not a good way to make legislation at all.
Since we're here, we're talking about working together with your people across the aisle. I have a question from a resident that I'm going to put up the screen, okay, that's in line with what we just discussed, Senator. Okay, so first question we have: are you willing to work across the aisle to get results for your constituents? Can you give a specific example when you work with the Republicans to advance something important for Pitt and Edgecombe County?
Okay. So, yes, I am willing to work across the aisles, and I have worked across the aisles before. Um, when I first got into the General Assembly, even in the House, um, it was the same situation as now. Democrats were not getting bills passed. I was able to get 3 or 4 bills passed as a primary sponsor, and I was like shocked. But what I did was I talked to my peers. I talked to them. I let them know what I had, and the one that really stands out is the one about the cosmetology school. I introduced it as a bill by itself. It went to committee and it sat and it was not able to go anywhere. But what I did was I kept reaching out to my peers, having conversations with them, talking with them. So much so that the John Locke Foundation picked up the information and they thought it was good. Then I started thinking, well, I better look at this bill. What did I write that they thought it was good? Because they're typically complete opposite of anything that we would stand for or promote or push as Democrats. But they thought it was good reg reform. And I was like, wow, I appreciate that. So they even wrote stories on it, how it should be something that should be considered. But what I did was I talked to my not only my Republican peers in the House, I also went to the Senate and I talked to the rules chair there, and I asked him about it, and he said, well, maybe it's a regulation reform, so maybe we can put it into a reg form bill. There's one being worked on right now. And I said, okay, great. So I went back to the House side and I talked to the Speaker of the House and talked to some of my other peers who were working on the reg reform bill. And I gave them the information, gave them the background of the bill, let them know what it was about. They even talked to the staff from the cosmetology board just to make sure that it was something that was in line. And then they put it into the reg reform bill and it was able to be passed. I was excited. And that was, me as a freshman. So I did that and I was like, wow. But then when it came to other bills and other things that I was able to pass for that time, I did the same thing. Because it can't just pass in like now I'm in the Senate, it can't just pass in the Senate and not pass in the House. It won't become law. So I not only worked with some of the Republicans that was in the House when I was there, I also went over to the Senate and had a conversation. I think one of them was adoption of pets. When people adopt a pet, they had issues where individuals were coming back, former dog owners, and getting the address and trying to go back and saying, now I want my dog back. Like, what? So that's one of the things that I worked across the aisles. It was able to pass the House. It was able to pass the Senate. And now I guess you can call it a closed adoption because the former person, the former owner won't get the person's address to go and harass them for adopting a pet or anything of that nature. But it's relationship building is key. Now, I can tell you the news show that it seems like we're fighting all the time. And I can tell you that for over 80% of the bills, they're unanimous votes. We all vote and approve probably 80% of those bills. The other 20%, that's what you see publicized on TV. And I will say those that 20% are those issues that seem to be what I call hot buttons for people. Those issues that seem to get people out to the polls to vote. Those are the things that people seem to see a lot, and it seems like we're fighting all the time. But what you may not see behind the scenes when that gavel is they bang the gavel and we walk out of those chambers, we talk to each other. When they have events and they're maybe having a celebration, they have a big tent up, and we're all going to eat. We go and we sit and we eat and we talk. We have events afterwards. Different groups. The nurses may come up and have an event. Um, Different people come and have events. We go to those events and we laugh, we talk, we're all together. So it's not hatred like people seem to think, but they're just, it comes time when we have some major things that we feel different about, and that's when they're highlighted the most. So we work together a lot.
I totally agree, Senator, with that because it seems like sometimes, like on social media, um, they clip up so many things of y'all, and it's like it looks like y'all are never getting along. So
Yep.
I appreciate you for answering the residents' question. So we're gonna go ahead and get
But
into.
let me say this.
Okay.
If we had actual cameras
Yeah.
in the Senate so you guys could watch every one of our Senate sessions, you would be able to see and know that.
Yeah.
We have them in the House. They're not recorded. You can watch them on YouTube when the House is in session. We just don't have them in the Senate. I did introduce a bill for that. It's been tabled. Go ahead.
A lot of things has been tabled, but
Now, let me say this though. We got books every session. Everything is documented. What we
mhm.
say, all of that stuff is documented. Everything down to if we start session
Yeah.
and I'm the one to go and give the prayer, all of that is documented. So at the end of the session, we get a book, and that book has the dates. It has everything that happened that session. So that's one of the things that's put into our legislative library. And so when people come to visit, I tell them sometimes you can go and look at those things. But
Yeah.
we, as elected officials, we get those books. So I have one sitting right here.
Yeah. So we're going to get into some of your priorities, Senator. So what are your 2 to 3 priorities that you're going to be focused on for this term?
First, making things affordable. We have a lot of people who share, and including me. I mean, gas is ridiculous. It is, people need things to be affordable. They need food to be affordable, all of that. And then they need housing that's affordable. It's a lot of people who are talking about now they're in a position where they really want to get a house, but based on the prices, they can't get it. And with everything continuing to go up, 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 higher and higher. That's pretty big for me looking at affordability and talking about the housing crisis that we seem to have. And then looking at education. When I think about education, I know that we are dealing with those opportunity scholarships. And I've heard people say, well, they don't take money out of the public schools. They absolutely do. Because if the money was not going towards opportunity scholarships, people who could already afford it, like we had scholarships, right? And they were for those who could not afford it. I had no issues with that. But then when they opened it up for everybody, they didn't care if you was a billionaire, you can just get the money. Anybody who applied for it, I was like, what? And the issue was they didn't allow or offer busing. So therefore, people who could take their kids would be able to utilize it. And people who did not have access to cars or had to go to work or there was no bus, they would not be able to use the opportunity scholarship. So that's a lot of money. And I think that it is essential that we're taking care of our schools because those are public schools. Those are schools for the state of North Carolina, and we need to make sure we're taking care of them. Leandro was passed. Then we brought it back up, and they struck it down and said that nobody can tell us what to do as a General Assembly. And then we had a Republican judge to look at it, and he ruled that it should be passed. And then the same thing, it was no, we're not going to do it. I was like, what in the world? And so that was for schools in this area, like eastern part, who did not have access and have resources so that their students could be up to par with the other schools, like you have a Wake County, Mecklenburg County, Guilford County, some of those larger areas. And so that's what the money's for. But it did not win, and they just brought it back up and said we're gonna strike that down altogether. So education is a big thing. And then when we look at healthcare, we've expanded Medicaid, right? But that's just the half of it. We have hospitals who are closing, and now we just have some money in the budget to try to study what we're going to do with Martin, the hospital in Martin County, how we're going to get that started back. What are we going to do? Trying not to close other clinics and hospitals, making sure that we're taking care of the people, because I think health is a human right, um, and making sure that the monies that we send to the different areas are really allocated to those who need doctors in these areas. So I was just asked to be on a rural health transformation committee, and it's a 5-year appointment. And I said, I guess I need to, because in the East, it's different. I'm trying to help them understand we're not like the Wakes and the Mecklenburgs and what they have offered. So in the East, when I even look at where we are with ECU Health, we're a pretty large hospital, and we don't even have 100,000 people that would, have to be able to use the hospital, but we are a large hospital just to deal with the areas that we deal with. So our issues are different than other people. So those are the main things that I'm very concerned about, is that affordability, looking at the education, looking at healthcare, and then if I went one more, anything that has to do with economics, because I just want people to know that there's no limit to anyone being able to start a business, anyone being able to move forward. Um, when there's different grants and things out there, I think everyone should have access to utilize those, because small business owners, believe it or not, are the ones that employ more people. We have, big entities here and there, but the small business owners are the ones that really employ our people. So those are some critical things that I am concerned about, and I want to continue to push and move forward with.
That's good, Senator. We're going to get into a couple of those things. But what I wanted to ask you, because I mean, being that you have already been in the seat, as far as you introducing legislation for your priorities, for the things that are important to you, could you share some of the things that you have done in those areas? And then we'll get into education and affordability and those other things you were speaking about.
So some things that I have filed that's important to me, and I will start by telling people that you can go to North Carolina General Assembly.gov, and once you go there, you can go down and look my name up, and look up Senate first, and then you go to my name and look that up, and then you can look at all the bills that's been introduced. Um, because sometimes people just don't know that. You can also look at the bills that I have signed on as a support that was introduced by other people as well. But some of the things I looked at is workforce housing. If we look at the issue of people not being able to have housing and it's not affordable, we have to think about people like our teachers, our first responders, our law enforcement, making sure they have places to stay as well. So I introduced something that will give them the ability to have housing that's affordable for them. I've introduced information about raising the wage, because I thought, and I still think, that $7 still to be minimum wage of $7, it's not to say, well, other states are lower. No, I've heard people use the excuse, well, nobody's making $7. Well, then raise it. Raise it. People shouldn't have 2 and 3 jobs. I've introduced specific things to make sure that we had nurses in every school in both Pitt and Edgecombe County, because a lot of times when we have not always medical issues, but sometimes we have issues, and if we have a nurse in the school, at least those things can be assessed, and we can assist our students that way. I've introduced things to give our teachers step raises, because when they're going back, getting their masters and doing different things, I think they should be paid for that. We really appreciate that. Um, I introduced a bill that I found interesting, because someone said, if you get elected, I need you to figure out what can we do about this child support, because if I got to pay it, I can't pay it if I'm in jail. And I said, okay. I took it personal. So I started talking to a lot of the judges. I talked to the DAs. I talked to social services, talked to some parents who are going through the situation. And I said, what can we do? And what I came up with, I call it the child support bill. What I came up with is, instead of the mother or father being put into jail because they cannot pay child support, having the avenue to be able to go to the community college. And this is only for a short-term program, not a long-term program. And maybe they can take up something with brick masonry, or to be an electrician or a plumber, or something that's short-term. And while they're in school, they still have to pay a certain amount to when they go back to court, because if as long as they're in that class, they don't go to jail. What my thought is, if they're in these classes and they're improving the ability for them to get a job, the trades is something that we're losing right now. And with us losing the trades, a lot of people are saying we need more plumbers, and we need more electricians. We need this, we need that. Well, if these individuals have an opportunity to go to the community college, then to take these trades, these companies, when they come out, will be willing to come and say, hey, let me hire you, because now you're certified. So we'll be working with, dealing with that vacancy of the trades. We'll be working with them now, being able to get a job where they can maintain a standard of living for themselves and take care of their sibling or children, rather, because working at McDonald's, they might be able to take care of themselves. It's going to be hard to take care of someone else, but they can make a livable wage, and if they continue, they can become an entrepreneur, and then one day begin to hire other people. And so I felt like that was something that would be beneficial to everybody. So I introduced that, and I keep introducing it every year. Every time, if it's tabled, I introduce it again and again, because I think it's a great idea. And I've spoken with even some of my colleagues on the opposite side about it, because the major thing is, if we talk about, not everybody's going to college, right? And we need, these vocational skills. Well, this bill encompasses all of that. So I'm just trying to think of realistic things that people share with me that might be able to be beneficial, to put people into the position to be able to work, to make a living, and then we don't lose out on trades and things of that nature. So those are some of the things that come to mind right now. But I have offered bills that talk about farmers, wanting to make sure that the small farmers receive funding and make sure we're taking care of them. Y'all know the weather has been very different. We've been having droughts. We've been having things that's really affected them, and they need help. The number one thing that affects our budget that people don't seem to know about is agriculture, because all of you have to eat to live. And so we want to make sure that we're taking care of our farmers, and they're able to do that so they can feed us. So I work a lot with them, and try to find out what we can do to put things in place. I think one of the bills I introduced was something about heirs with farmers, because if they own farmland and they're working the farm, but let's say the spouse dies, then and they're working with us as a state under a certain grant, I think it should be able, the heir, the wife or the husband, whoever's still living, should be able to continue working with that farm and not have to lose being able to work with us as a state. So that was something that I introduced. One of the things I was very big on is working with our law enforcement, because when you start thinking about mental health, they deal with a lot of stuff, right? They see a lot of things. And I think it is imperative that we deal with taking care of their mental health. I had some conversations, so I was able to support someone else who introduced that bill so that we can try to take care of our first responders who go out and see some of the most gruesome things. I also am a part of the Mumdibus bill, and a lot of times what we do is pushing things for maternal health, especially Black maternal health. There's been a lot of issues where Black mothers have talked about the extreme situations that they've been in, and how they've been in situations to almost lose their lives, losing children, just because of someone not believing that they're in pain, or not believing that they're having issues, and thinking, oh, you're going to be okay. So Black maternal health has been a major issue. And so I push that every single time I can. And I think one of the latest things I'll talk about is we've been having a debate about cannabis for a very long time. So we come in and we have all these regulations and laws, and then we come in and we say we're not going to do anything, but everybody's asking, what are we doing? If it's recreational, medical, like, what are we doing? So I introduced something recently that we can have it as a constitutional amendment, that it's on the ballot for you, the people, to make a vote if we should have cannabis to be legal, whether it's medical or recreational. Do you think it should be legal? Period. If you say no, then we shouldn't be working on it to do anything else. If you say yes, then we should be moving forward to work on it. There's a lot of people who have been reaching out, talking about their medical issues, and how it's been assisting with their pain and things of that nature. It's a natural remedy for them. The doctor has told them that it would work well for them, and they ask me, what can we do? And so hearing all of these things, all the pros, all the cons, and not experiencing it ever myself, I said, let me put it out to the people. And so I did introduce that, and it's on the table right now. But we've had other things that's been placed on the to be a constitutional amendment that's going to be on the ballot. And I said, if we're putting these other things on the ballot, why can't we put this as a constitutional amendment on the ballot and put it up to the people? Let the people say yes or no. So, but I've been getting feedback and a lot of emails about that recently. I'm also on the cannabis caucus that the governor appointed me to, so I could learn more, and we can, take a holistic approach and look at it. And we have law enforcement, we have doctors, we have pharmacists, we have people who own CBD shops, we have uh, therapists. We have so many people on the committee, and we're taking a collective approach to take a look at it as well. And so I just didn't want to come in and say, well, hey, let's just legalize it. I said, let the people decide. And after there's a decision, then we can come back to the table if they say yes, and look at how it's going to be structured and what happens from there. So those are just a few of the things. And if you go back and look, it's a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah,
It's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
for sure. And I encourage people, like you said, to, take time out just to go to the General Assembly website and, research you and see what you are doing, how you're voting, and the things that you are introducing, just so they can have that understanding to help them make decisions about that instead of hearing outside things. I think it's important to do your own research.